So for the longest time, it's bothered me how the autofocus and auto exposure of my C920 Pro webcam has just completely ruined my shoots, and I haven't been able to be as dynamic as I'd want it to be. But today I'm going to show you a program called V4L-Utils, which will actually let you modify your webcam settings, not just for the C920 Pro, but for other webcams as well, without needing that proprietary Windows and macOS software. So if you're new to this channel, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below because it'll really help the channel out. I'm aiming for 1,000 subs and any help would be really appreciated. So now that's out of the way, let's get started. Good afternoon everyone and welcome back to the channel. So I did say that the program was called V4L-Utils, but I was mistaken there. That's actually the name of the package. So to install that, it's available in Arch on the standard repos and also like on Ubuntu and all of those distros and like Fedora and all that. And basically the way we install it on Arch is the same way that we would always install a program. So sudo, if it lets me type, I don't know what happened there, -s V4L-Utils, and I think it might be a dependency for something like OBS maybe, or some other program, because I already had it installed, so you might already have it, but if you don't, you can just install it like that. So this is a very, very simple program. I think there might be GUI frontends for it, but we're just going to work with the terminal application. So later in the video, I will show you a comparison of my default settings with my new settings. So check that out if you want to see what the actual difference is. But for now, we're just going to run through this. So the actual program that we're going to be using is called V4L2-CTL. So we can look at the man page for that, V4L2-CTL. I'm surprised I managed to say that without, you know, just completely falling apart. So the first thing that we want to do is actually list out the devices. So to do that, that's very simple. So we just give it the -- list devices option. So if we do that now, -- list - devices. Okay, so I have got 2 webcams installed. So these numbers are going to be different depending on your system. So I've got my built-in webcam, and I've got the one that you're seeing right now, my C920 Pro. So the path you're actually looking for is this top one. So this /dev/video2, obviously it could be something else. If you're on a desktop, you've probably only got one webcam installed, or maybe you're a weird person who's got like a bunch of them. Just find the webcam that you want to play with, and that's going to be the top path. So from here, I will show you the script that I'm running so that I can basically show you the settings that I'm doing. So the problem with changing your settings, they don't actually get stored anywhere. So you have to run this script every single time you want to actually record, basically. So every time you reopen OBS, it's going to basically reload the settings. So it's not going to have anything. And there's a couple of other situations where you're going to just have to run the script. So just make sure you have everything that you want to do within a script, and then you won't have any problem whatsoever. So if we bring up my scripts folder, so vscripts and what is it? Fixcam, right. Okay, there's a couple of different things that I'm doing in here. I'll go through what all of them do. So I'll bring up another terminal actually, and what we can do here is I can actually show you what the settings are for my webcam right now. So they'll be set to this, and then you'll be able to see the actual ranges that you can set stuff in. Okay, so the command you're going to want to run is this right here. So V4L2-CTL, the program that we're using, -D, then the path to the device that you're actually working on. So that'll be the path to my webcam. Obviously, as I said before, this number is going to be different to you, but it'll be /dev/video and then some sort of number. Work that out for yourself on your system. And then a -- list - controls. Okay, we run that, and it's gonna be formatted weirdly, but you should be able to read what it says here. So right now my brightness is set to 120. As you can see, I've set that in here. A lot of these settings I haven't touched, but most of them I have. So the first 2 things that we're gonna go over is the autofocus and the auto exposure. So they seem to be, I don't know, at least with this webcam, intrinsically tied together. So if you, but only in like one way, I don't really get it. So if you turn your exposure auto to 1, which isn't off, but I'm not sure if it actually is off, my webcam settings might be weird because it doesn't seem to actually be doing anything. So if I put my hand there, you'll notice it doesn't do anything. So at least on my webcam, setting it to 1 seems to be off, but there is also the ability to change it to 0, but I can't seem to do that. I've tried it off cam before and it says that it's an invalid actual number. So maybe 1's the minimum for my webcam. And then to disable your autofocus, you basically just set that to 0. So 0 is basically going to set it to false. So where is the autofocus? It's somewhere in this list. Focus, auto. Yeah, so that's a Boolean. Default, it's at 1. I've set it to 0. So now that you've turned off your autofocus, what you're going to want to do is mess with your absolute focus, because if you don't, you're going to have to deal with whatever default setting it gives you when you open up your recording software. So I've set it to 20. So I'll actually modify this now, and I'll show you what this does. So if we run that and run fix cam, now you'll notice, I'll go full screen here. Now it's completely out of focus. So the higher that number is, the closer the focus is. I think, yeah, there we go. That's focus. Okay, so what I've noticed with a couple of sessions of just tinkering around with it is somewhere between 10 and 40 seems to be roughly right for my recording distance. It's going to depend entirely on your distance and entirely on basically what your webcam is and a bunch of other settings, but we set that again now, and that should bring my focus back to what it should be. Now, the other big thing is your exposure. So I've noticed that boosting my exposure, really anything above 400, and I start getting noticeable lag with my webcam. So I've done a previous video about fixing some of your webcam lag, but this is actually one of the other problems. So sometimes your auto exposure will actually raise your exposure so much that it starts actually lagging your computer, because I don't think it's actual hardware exposure. I think it might be software exposure, but I kind of went off track there. Basically what exposure is that will control pretty much the, I guess, sensitivity to the light that your webcam will have. I guess that's the best way to explain it. So it's basically ISO, roughly. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to be roughly what it's like. So if we set that to 100, what we'll notice is my webcam's going to get very, very dark. So you can see that now. I'll switch back over. Now, the scene looks horrible. No matter how much light I give, it's going to look horrible. It's just way too dark. So if we get, but we do notice that everything moves much faster. So I don't know what's going on with this exposure problem, but it seems like that when you lower the exposure, it's doing less work, because if you notice my fingers, like there's basically no lag with them. So unless your monitor's horrible and you can't really tell. We set that back to 400, which was what I had before, and we run that again, and you'll notice there's a little bit of ghosting. It's not bad, like it's entirely usable, but there is definitely some ghosting there, and the scene's now much brighter. And then if we were to go above this, like let's say we go to 800, what we'll notice is the scene gets very, very bright, and also it starts lagging very noticeably. Okay, so we run that, and now we'll see it gets very bad. So yeah, you probably can't even see there. Okay, that's probably for the best. Yeah, okay. I keep peeking at my actual recording, so sorry about that. It's very difficult not to do that when I'm actually talking about my actual recording settings. I'll try to keep looking at this, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, so we'll set that back to something sensible. Okay, so the next settings I've got here are my brightness, saturation, contrast, and sharpness. Okay, so brightness is just, that's probably the most self-explanatory one. That'll basically just raise the brightness of the image, but you have to be wary with this. If you go too high, so the default I believe is like 128. If you go too high with it, it's going to start washing out the image. And if you go too low, obviously, it's going to get very dark. So if we lower that to, not 90, let's go 60. So we'll see that it'll get very, very dark like this. But I don't know, maybe you're going for a look like that. If you don't have as much contrast as I do, it might look fine. And maybe if you've got enough light that it'll work, it might also look fine. But going too low is obviously going to basically make it completely unusable with how dark it is. And the same is true if you go the other way. So if we raise the brightness a bunch, and now it's set to 180, we'll notice that it's very bright. I probably don't even need my actual recording lights or the outside light that I've got, but I lose a lot of detail in basically everything. Like my beard, it doesn't look great, and just everything is really washed out. So I like having this at around 120, but it's going to very much depend on your actual recording scene. So we'll switch back to my desktop. Okay, so we've also got my saturation. So saturation, pretty much, I don't know what the best way to describe saturation is. It kind of controls the amount of color in a scene, I think is the best way to describe it. So if I was to lower saturation down to its absolute lowest, which is 0, then what will happen is the scene will basically turn grayscale. So, not basically, it will turn grayscale. So set that to 0, if it will let me set 0. Yes, it will. Okay, so as you notice, my recording now looks very much like another Linux YouTuber's recording. If you've ever seen his content, comment down below if you know who I'm talking about. And yeah, I don't know, maybe you're going for a weird effect like this, but personally I like color, so I'm not going to use this. So I typically have my contrast a bit higher. It really depends on how you feel about color accuracy. I think by default the webcam's a little weird with its color accuracy. I think it's a bit closer to reality like it is now, but we can also go much higher. So if I want to become like orange, then I can set that to 255, and as we'll see, should go more pink, don't I? Red? I don't know. The monitor I'm looking at on has terrible color accuracy, so if I'm saying colors that don't make any sense, that is why. But on my screen, it looks like I'm pink right now. So I'll go back, set that to a sensible color. Okay. And contrast is basically, once again, I'm not very good with color stuff. I've only very recently got into cameras. So your contrast is the difference between your colors, I think. So if we lower this, what you'll notice, we'll go extreme with it. It's the best way to actually show it off. What we'll see is that, so you'll notice that there's a very obvious difference between the like red in my face and like this bit of shadow here, but it looks awful. And if we go back to my desktop and we set this back to like maybe 180. Oh, I moved my terminal to another screen. That's what happened before. And we run fixed cam again, and we'll notice here it gets like very white. So I got it backwards before. So when you lower it, there's less difference between the colors, and now there's more difference. So you have this bit of like white in my face, and that is very noticeably different from any of the like black in my beard or like anything else. So contrast kind of controls that. I'm not exactly sure about the best way to describe it, but I like to leave this at its default value because it kind of just messes with everything if you try to move it around. And that's back to normal now. Okay, so sharpness is the next setting that I play around with. So sharpness, basically, it'll control how, I guess, hard edges are. And for some scenes, that might be a good idea. Like, doing something like this, where I'm just sitting in front of the camera, it's probably fine. You can make out more of my beard hairs if I raise that up. And if you lower sharpness too much, it's effectively the same as, like, lowering your focus. It's obviously not the same, but because all your edges are so soft, it kind of just looks like everything is out of focus. So what I like to do is just have that a bit above the standard, which is 150. But if we raise that up too much, you might not be able to notice a difference, because once it gets to a certain point, you kind of have to have very specific situations for it to be weirdly noticeable, but there is something there. You'll look at the scene and you'll see something about it just feels off and you can't really pin it down. I think you're losing a bit too much detail in like the thin stuff, because the problem with raising your sharpness is you'll start losing detail in places. And with stuff like this, like, I don't know if you can make it out right now, like on my recording, it looks like the light on the Blue Yeti is like jittering weirdly, and that's one of the things that can happen. And also the actual back thing of the Blue Yeti here has this weird pattern on it that's not actually there in real life. So if we lower that down to 150 again, run that script, the weird pattern's there, but you don't really have the jittery stuff, and you can make out more of my beard now. So obviously this is going to be very much up to how you want to have your settings. So we'll switch back to my main desktop, and there's a bunch of other stuff you can change in here, like your power line frequency. I have no idea what that is. No idea at all. I don't know if you can change your white balance temperature, because it seems to be flagged as inactive, and I don't know how to change that to active. So that might just be something that you can't change on this webcam. Maybe you can change it on others. I don't know. And some of this other stuff, like you can change the tilt. I don't know what that... I'm assuming that's going to like rotate the actual recording, but I haven't even bothered to touch that because that doesn't sound like a good idea. So tilt_absolute, and then change that to like, say 200. Some of this stuff, it doesn't actually work with my webcam. So if we run that, I don't know, what did that do? Is there a difference? Maybe we set something really extreme and we'll notice a difference. So what is the max value? Tilt absolute, 36,000. Okay, that's probably why I didn't notice a difference. We'll go midway. That might show us something. 18,000? Okay. I don't know if that does anything on my webcam. Maybe on others that might do it. As I said, it lists out all of these features, but some of them aren't available on every webcam. So if it's not, then you're probably just not going to be able to do anything. Yeah, I've got the setting just changed then, and it doesn't look like it's done anything. Okay, so that doesn't seem like it does anything on my webcam. Yeah, if you want to change any of these other settings, go ahead. As I said, some of the stuff might not work, but this basic stuff like your color palette, not color palette, color grading, and your autofocus and auto exposure probably is going to work. Same with like the absolute focus and the absolute exposure. So I think that might be pretty much everything for this video. I think we've gone over everything that I wanted to do. So I think I will end it there. No, I won't, because I didn't actually go over the test videos. So I will play those first, and then we're going to end the video. So this is the C920 with just the basic settings. I've got my normal lighting set up, so I've got my NIWA 176 off to that side. Then next to it, I've got a bit of natural light coming in through a window. And then on the other side, I've got just some rando desk lamp. And what you'll notice is that if I put my hands a bit close to the webcam, you'll notice that the background gets a bit brighter. And I move it away and it gets darker again. And also, if I get close, then it should autofocus on my face, maybe, eventually. The autofocus doesn't work all the time, so you might have heard the audio get a bit weird just because I've got the Blue Yeti here. But basically, my biggest problem with this is that I literally cannot wear white shirts because of this. So what will happen, if I have a white shirt on, basically you've got the light reflecting off of the shirt, and that will just completely ruin the auto exposure. So what ends up happening is the scene just becomes incredibly bright, and the problem is I've got a lot of white shirts, so I've got to make sure I've actually got black shirts that I can wear during these shoots, otherwise I'm just not going to be able to do anything. So we'll swap over to the fixed version and I'll show you what that looks like. So this will be basically the exact same lighting situation. I'm recording this about 5 minutes after the previous one. I've got the exact same light setup, so I've got my NIWA off to that side, I've got my natural light coming through the window, and I've got my desk lamp. And as you can see here, if I put my hands really close to the webcam, nothing happens. And also, if I like wave my arms around, it's not trying to like autofocus on them, it's not trying to like correct the light for them, so I can be a lot more dynamic like this, and it's not going to completely ruin my shot composition and my basically all of my settings. I'm still trying to work out the exact settings for stuff, like I'm not sure about my sharpness and my contrast. Actually, contrast is probably going to stay the same because that completely ruins my shot, but my saturation and my brightness mainly, and maybe a touch exposure, but probably not. As I mentioned earlier, the exposure can really start lagging your system, but I think this looks much better. And as you'll notice, like I couldn't get it to focus on my face before, but no matter what I do this time, it's not going to focus on my face. There's no autofocus anymore, there's no auto exposure, it's all set manually, and this means that I can then just color grade it once I'm doing it in post. So you're going to notice that this recording looks a little different to the actual parts where I'm just talking, because I have color graded that a bit differently. But this is just the raw footage before I've done any effects to it. So hopefully it looks better. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the actual test footage there. You should be able to see a very noticeable difference between the two recordings, especially with things like putting my hands there and it just ruins the shot. So I think that is pretty much everything for this video. So if you like this video, remember to smash that like button and leave me a comment down below to let me know what you think. I'm probably not going to do any more like camera stuff, but if you want to see just random Linux tools, let me know. And if you've got any other ideas, put them down below and I'll happily check them out. So if you want to see those videos when they come out, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below because it'll really help the channel out. Down below, I've got my Discord link if you want to chat with me, and also my library link if you want to see my videos on a platform that isn't YouTube. Also down there will be a support link, so if you want to support the channel, and yeah, go ahead and do that. But my content will always be available for free, so if you don't want to do that, don't feel pressured to actually go and support the channel. Up on that corner, I've got the playlist that this video's in, so go check that out if you want to see other videos like this. Probably Linux tutorials, because I was going to say I don't think I have other videos like this, but no, Linux tutorials will work. And also I've got my Twitter and my Mastodon down below if you want to get video updates. So I think that's pretty much everything for me now, and I'm out.